Hello and welcome to Firstpost Spotlight, where we bring you stories that matter to you from all across the world. From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, we shed light on issues that shape our world. I'm Alison Lagrange, live from Durban, South Africa. Let's begin with the top headlines. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi arrives in New Delhi for a 3-day visit. He is scheduled to meet External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and Prime Minister Modi as the two countries consider resuming border trade for the first time since the 2020 Galwan clash. Hamas officials in Cairo receive a new proposal for a ceasefire in Gaza, calling for an initial 60-day truce and hostage release in 2 batches. The group says it will hold to internal consultations before responding. South Korea and the US kick off their annual joint military drills aimed at countering threats from a nuclear-armed North Korea. Pyongyang calls the exercises invasion rehearsals. Myanmar's junta sets December the 28th as the date for the first elections in 5 years, dismissed by critics as a sham over lack of real political representation. And Thailand rolls out a program for foreign visitors to convert digital assets, such as cryptocurrencies, into the baht currency to fund their travel expenses in the country. Hello and welcome. We begin today in the United States, where after the highly anticipated meeting between US President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin, Washington is now set to host Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky and European leaders for talks on a peace deal. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will meet Donald Trump in the Oval Office later today, followed by a larger session in the White House with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, NATO's Secretary General Mark Rutte, and the leaders of Britain, France, Germany, Italy, and Finland. Ahead of his meeting with Trump, Zelensky said he shared a strong desire to end the Ukraine war quickly and reliably. He stressed that Ukrainians are fighting for their land and for their independence, and that Russia must end the war that it started. He added that he hoped the joint strength of America and Europe would compel Russia into a real peace. Now the White House summit comes just 2 days after Trump hosted Vladimir Putin in Alaska, a meeting that did not produce a ceasefire, but led to discussions about possible security guarantees for Ukraine. European leaders and Zelensky were left out of the Alaska meeting, and Trump has since appeared to have shifted to back Moscow's position that a ceasefire is not required before final peace talks. On Sunday, the US president took to social media, putting the onus on Zelensky to make concessions and declaring that Crimea, annexed by Russia in 2014, would not return to Ukraine, and that NATO membership was also off the table. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio also said on Sunday that a ceasefire was still possible, but that the best way to end the conflict was through a full peace deal.
The only way to finalize a peace agreement is you have to have both sides agree to it and both sides of it involved. How many times have we heard from the Ukrainians and from others, there is nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine? Well, Ukraine wasn't at the meeting, but this was a very important meeting. Now, ultimately, if there isn't a peace agreement, if there isn't an end to this war, the president's been clear there are going to be consequences, but we're trying to avoid that.
For now, Russia reportedly demands Ukrainian withdrawal from the Kherson, Luhansk, Zaporizhia and Donetsk regions that Moscow claimed to annex in 2022. It also wants Ukraine to halt its military mobilization and to abandon its NATO ambitions. But Kyiv has rejected such terms, saying they would force it to cede the remainder of Donetsk, where its troops hold strong defensive positions. It has repeatedly asked security guarantees and long-term defense support, and Zelensky has insisted that no peace deal can legitimize occupation. European leaders have backed Kyiv's position, warning that any pressure on Ukraine to cede territory would only amount to capitulation.
Ukraine must be able to uphold its sovereignty and its territorial integrity. There can be no limitations on Ukrainian armed forces, be it cooperation with or other third countries or assistance from other third countries, no limitations for the Ukrainian armed forces. As I've often said, Ukraine must become a steel porcupine, undigestible for potential invaders. With regards to any territorial questions in Ukraine, our position is clear. International borders cannot be changed by force.
Steve Witkoff, Donald Trump's special envoy to Russia, said in an interview that the US and European countries could offer NATO-like security guarantees for Ukraine outside of the organization as part of a peace deal with Russia. But away from the diplomatic front, the war has continued. A Russian air attack on a residential area in Kharkiv overnight killed 3 people, including a toddler, and injured 19 others. The authorities have said that the number of the injured from the Kharkiv attack was likely to increase. So as Washington prepares to host President Zelensky alongside European leaders, all eyes will be on whether these talks can deliver a roadmap toward ending the conflict or simply underscore the deep divisions that remain. And shifting focus to West Asia now, Israel has carried out another strike in Yemen. This time the target was an energy facility south of Sanaa, the Aziz power station. The Israeli military says the Houthis were using the site. Meanwhile, the Houthis did not identify the source of the attack and reportedly said that the power station was hit by an aggression that knocked down generators and caused a fire that was later contained. Residents in Sanaa said at least 2 explosions were heard, although there are no reports of casualties. Israeli officials confirmed the strike was launched from Navy missile boats. This was the second time the Israeli Navy has carried out such an attack in Yemen. Most previous strikes were carried out by Air Force fighter jets. The Israeli Defense Forces said the recent strikes were conducted in response to the repeated attacks by the Houthis. It added that the group, which is directly funded by Iran, threatened global trade. The recent attack marked the 14th time that Israel has attacked the Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen, and the Houthis were not late to respond. They hit back within hours. A missile was launched toward Israel, and sirens were heard in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. The missile was, however, intercepted. Now, these back-and-forth attacks are not new. The Houthis began firing at Israel in November of 2023 with rockets, drones, ballistic missiles. They call it their support for Palestinians in Gaza. Since March, when the IDF resumed its offensive against Hamas in the Gaza Strip, the Houthis have launched nearly 70 missiles on Israel and more than 20 drone attacks. Most were intercepted. However, one missile attack killed a civilian in Tel Aviv last year. This triggered Israel's first attack in Yemen. And this is not just a two-way fight. There are other powers in the story. Beyond attacks on Israel, the Houthis have also targeted alleged Israeli-linked ships in the Red Sea and in the Gulf of Aden off Yemen. The Iran-backed group broadened its campaign to target ships tied to the United States and Britain after the 2 countries began military strikes to secure the waterway in January of 2024. The US and UK have bombed Houthi targets in the past. Washington even struck a deal earlier this year. It agreed to stop the bombing campaign against the Houthis, and in return, the Houthis asked to stop attacks in the Red Sea. Now, the Houthis said that the deal will not cover Israel. So the strikes continue. The missiles keep coming. Each attack meets with a response, and each response feeds the cycle. And moving on, US President Donald Trump's administration is tightening the scrutiny of legal immigrants applying to be American citizens. The US Citizenship and Immigration Services has issued a fresh set of rules outlining stricter standards for applicants. Green card holders typically become eligible for citizenship after 3 or 5 years, depending on their case. Along with passing English and civics tests, they must demonstrate good moral character, a requirement now facing a broader review. Under the new rules, U.S. immigration officers are told to take a holistic assessment of applicants, looking beyond criminal records. Officials must now consider positive contributions to society, including community service, caregiving, stable employment, and payment of taxes. The Trump administration memo also flags conduct that isn't illegal, but could signal a lack of civic responsibility. And examples include records of reckless driving, harassment, or aggressive solicitation. Behaviors, it says, are considered contrary to the average behavior of citizens in the country. The Trump administration memo says that rehabilitation should be weighed in cases of past wrongdoing, compliance with probation, paying overdue taxes or child support, and community support letters could mitigate concerns. The U.S. Immigration Agency says the new policy is part of Trump's push to restore integrity to the naturalization process. The agency says the U.S. citizenship can be granted to those who embrace America's culture, history, and language while demonstrating strong moral character. Over 800,000 people became American citizens in 2024 during the naturalization ceremonies held all over the United States. The new standards could change the approval process and affect future applicants, especially the ones from countries such as India and China. To put it simply, the Trump administration is raising the bar for immigrants seeking U.S. citizenship. With hundreds of thousands of immigrants becoming citizens each year, this new policy could significantly reshape who qualifies in the coming years. And nature's fury struck Pakistan with little warning. On the 15th of August, a sudden cloudburst in the north unleashed torrents that tore through villages, uprooting trees, flattening homes, and sweeping away entire families within minutes. Some still search desperately for the missing. Others lay crushed beneath rubble, while many fight for survival on life support. Torrential rains unleashed the deadliest floods of this monsoon season, killing over 300 people. Entire villages were wiped out and survivors pleaded for urgent help. In Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, massive trees were uprooted as muddy torrents crashed down the hill, with more than 150 millimeters of rain falling within an hour in the Buna district alone. Within minutes, homes, shops and mosques lay submerged. The death toll crossed over 350, with Buna accounting for more than 200 lives lost. The sheer force of water spared nothing. Vehicles were tossed aside, crushed under raging currents. Families sat helplessly as rescue crews pulled bodies from trees. One survivor compared the rains to the Day of Judgment, saying his entire village was destroyed when floodwaters burst through a Japanese-built bridge. Rescue operations were massive but dangerous. Helicopters and civilian teams searched for survivors, while tractors dug through mud-choked streets. But treacherous conditions persisted. One relief chopper even crashed, killing all 5 crew members. Still, emergency teams pushed on as officials declared a state of emergency. Beyond lives lost, the destruction was staggering. More than 30,000 homes were damaged. Schools and health centers lay in ruins. Croplands were swallowed. And social workers said that many bodies remained unrecovered, calling the damage massive.
जो कुदरती आफत आए इस पूरे इलाके पर उसमें 200 से ज़ायद लोग जो है वो कैजुअल्टीज हो चुकी है। इस वक्त भी सर्च ऑपरेशन जारी है। कुछ डेड बॉडीज अभी तक रिकवर नहीं हो सकी, लेकिन बहुत ज़्यादा नुकसान हुआ है।
Pakistan's vulnerability to monsoon floods is nothing new. In 2022, catastrophic floods submerged 1/3 of the country, killed over 1,700 people, and affected 33 million more, with estimated losses exceeding $30 billion. Authorities needed at least $16 billion for recovery, yet only about 2/3 was pledged. Flashback to 2010, floods left nearly 2,000 dead, affected 20 million people, and caused up to $43 billion in economic damage. And the pattern continues. Experts link these intensifying floods to climate change, with rainfall intensity up 10 to 15% and glacial melt accelerating the danger. For Pakistan, a country that contributes less than 1% of global emissions, but ranks among the most climate vulnerable, the stakes couldn't be higher. For survivors, the next battle is survival itself. With more heavy rains on the horizon, fears of fresh landslides loom large. And for Pakistan, already reeling from a deep economic crisis, the road to rebuilding is nothing short of uphill. And that's all we have on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to First Post.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on First Post.
Hello and a very warm welcome. I'm Alison LaGrange and you're watching First Post. In the next few minutes, we'll get you the top 40 updates from around the world, only here on Fast and